Welcome to the Soccer Media Podcast. We continue our conversations every couple of days during the World Cup cycle here. And Max BRETOS has been good enough to join us from MLS, Apple TV, LAFC, being kept very busy with Sirius XM FC after all the games. And of course, he's a veteran of ESPN as well. Max, thanks for your time as always.
Thanks, John. That's a very, very concise and accurate description. So, yeah, it's been wonderful. We've been waiting for this tournament, and we wanted to stay in the soccer space, all of us, as busy as possible. And the interest is high, so the busyness is real.
Has it been, because we've talked about this, when we expected this to be the biggest spectacle in the history of the world in sports. Has it been that?
I think so. And I think, like most World Cups, when a week out, 2 weeks out, let's just say like about a month out, folks, are going, why is there no one talking about it? But, behind closed doors and things that are not being seen, there is a lot of enthusiasm. But I think people were expecting to see a Christian Pulisic, billboard on every corner. And it wasn't, but it was all happening. And then we were hearing words about the tickets, and the ticket prices are real. But, as we see this, we were worried that there would be half full stadiums. Obviously, that's not the case. And we were looking for empty seats. And every time you watch a game, there's less and less empty seats. And now there are no empty seats. So whatever the ticketing issue was, people overcame that. And then obviously the politics. So we didn't feel great going into the World Cup. And these are all valid concerns. And I don't want to minimize them at all. But, when you're hearing that before the World Cup, as opposed to what we're hearing now, Messi and Mbappe and all the stars coming out, it's hard to get pumped up about it. But then the World Cup begins, and we've covered so many before, and it goes on. And again, we don't want to sweep things under the rug, but this is what we wanted to see. And at least for now, we're seeing the benefits of a World Cup. Yeah, there's a lot of money being thrown around, and maybe the wrong people. And, there's a lot of people that aren't being led into this country that should be, or having to face a complicated situation. And yeah, the ticket prices are so high, but we have a chance to consume it, and we're all consuming it in bushels.
I don't think I'm betraying anything if I say you're based in Los Angeles and that's where you are. Have you had an opportunity to see any of thof games up close in the stadium?
Yeah, I had a late start, and I kind of screwed up my ability to get a credential. And I would say this about FIFA. They've been some of the credential requests have been accepted by a wider group of journalists or influencers or what have you. It's a new day. And FIFA obviously prioritized where people could go in. Anyway, I made a hash of that. So, John, I was looking for tickets, and I thought they'd be available because of all we heard about the ticket prices, and they were hot to come by. But to answer your question, I did make it out to the Canada-South Africa game, which was at SoFi. Being in LA, you wanted to see a game there. So I saw it, and it exceeded all expectations. And then I was there for the round of 32 game. I drove up to San Jose and then popped over to Santa Clara to watch USA Bosnia and Herzegovina, which was, at the time it's hot. I'm tired. You're watching the game, but then the best part of that game, and I guess watching World Cups, which stick out above any sort of regular sporting event, not to diminish that at all. I mean, we all love our sports, but immediately after you're thinking about it and just realizing what you saw there, you will be talking about for 20, 30 years. We will relive that Malik Tillman free kick and all that comes with it. So that's really, that's a very core memory now, even though it's just a couple days removed, we know that that's something that I'll be able to say, yeah, I was there and I'm really thrilled about it. So I know it was important for a lot of people to go. And if you haven't seen a game, go to a watch party or see it on a movie screen, that all counts to be part of the euphoria as well. But that was important for me for covering this sport, and appreciate all those people that allowed that to happen.
Yeah. We are recording this on Friday afternoon, the 3rd of July. Mexico's playing this weekend. Ask you about that in a couple of minutes. And the USA is playing on Monday against Belgium. Of course, I don't think it's, I think we're still in the same news cycle. Balogun red card, and what do they do without Balogun? I don't think those are the same question, but if you want to put them in the same answer, I'm welcome. I'm welcome to hear that. I welcome that.
The Balogun red card, these are the things that we talk most about. And there was this technology of a chip in the ball in the Portugal-Croatia game, which just allowed a Croatian equalizer. And, the officiating, we knew it was going to come, and it's come in here. But it's part of the the pomp and circumstance of the World Cup and people getting outraged about these decisions, and certainly the Balogun situation as well. It opens up a conversation about that. You know what? Should it have been that based on the rules and the point of contact rules of what you can view on slow motion in an instant replay? That does not apply from what I read, which means if it wasn't called on the field, then it shouldn't have been a red card. End of story. Because that is what the rule books that have been put in by the officials. That said, when you watch it, it's a red card. I mean, that I always think about Mumerovic, the Bosnian player. If he broke his leg, what would that do? I mean, Flo Balogun's tournament might be over. He would be vilified everywhere. And I think that's why I walk away that fortunately it wasn't. Was it? People will go, well, it was accidental or there was no intent. And I go, I don't think that matters. I mean, unless I don't know something and players at the World Cup are intentionally going in to break people's legs, which is not, it can't be the case. It's either I went in for a tackle. He didn't know anything. Obviously, he didn't know anything about his landing spot, but that doesn't take away from the contact. And then either you go in and you know it's risky, or you go in innocuously and something bad happens. I don't think there's ever really intent, with maybe a handful of exceptions in the history of the World Cup with regards to something on the foot. It's always accidental stepping and what are the consequences of that? So I thought it shouldn't have been a red, but it was. If that makes any sense. And now with the U.S., this is, I think he's been there. He was so important to them in that game. And now this challenge against Belgium, this is not the deepest team. And Mauricio Pochettino used 3 subs, or when he uses 5 subs, it's they come in very late. So that core group he leans into. So this is going to be difficult to change. The question is, straight switch with Ricardo Pepi, or does he bring in or remove Christian Pulisic or Gio Reyna to that number 9 position? I would lean into Pepi because that's who came in when the red card happened. So eventually, so it's a big loss for the U.S. But they still have a team that could beat Belgium even without Flo Balogun.
So I would say apparently if Haji Wright was an option, we would have seen him in one of the first 4 games, at least at some point. Is that fair enough? The way to look at it? Yeah.
I mean, I even thought of at the game he's from Los Angeles, Haji Wright. And in the game against Turkey, which didn't really mean anything. I hate to phrase it that way because it does mean. But that would have been the game to start him. And then he didn't start there and didn't play. He's come in for a little bit in the Australia game, but that's about the extent of it. So I don't see him as a candidate at this point, just based on what we've seen in these 4 games.
So you've been around soccer forever, your entire life, Max. How does the U.S. beat Belgium? And I'll say without Balogun, but of course it's without Balogun. He can't play. How do they beat this team?
I think they do what they've been doing. Don't change your tactics. I think it's that back 3 who've been really good. Certainly in the Bosnia game with Tim Ream, Chris Richards, and Alex Freeman. Close to perfect game from them. And then you play with the 2 wing backs, and you do it by and large, with the exception of Flo Balogun. The question is how much change, how seismic is the change to replace him? That would be the only difference in this lineup for the U.S. But the Belgium team it's perfect timing to play them. They're here. They got to be saying, how are we here? We barely won our group. And we were in such dire straits against Senegal. And I think it was more a Senegal collapse. I mean, they're going to be talking about that in Senegal for 100 years, about that game, that they would pull out their most important player or their most famous player, Kevin De Bruyne, and they would replace Jeremy Doku, who's been, one of the 5 or 6 big young talents in the world's game. They came out of the game. So now you got to fix all of that if you're Belgium. So how do you fix it? So I think Belgium's going to be looking more to the U.S. and go, how do we adapt to how they're playing? Because the one thing about the U.S., they have not really altered. They go, this is what we're going to do. And they've been successful, even against low blocks like we saw against Bosnia. We saw that against Paraguay and Australia. They are able to break them down. And if Belgium wants to play, I think that's that's a lick your chops moment for the U.S. the way they're playing. It's a really close game. I'm not saying U.S. are going to win. I think they are. But either way, I mean, it's going to be in the margins, and I can trust the U.S. more than I can trust Belgium at this point.
Yeah. Where are you in the Pochettino coaching camp? Doing a terrific job, doing pretty well. What you expected? Where do you see him in that? What camp are you in there?
Terrific, and just because how it started and where he's now, he said, you have to be patient. He goes, it's 18 months, and I hope to have this timetable where when the 18 months, which is when the World Cup started, he would be with the ideal team. He's gotten lucky with some injuries. Chris Richards was injured right before the World Cup. He's healthy. Then you had the Pulisic injury, which wasn't as serious as we thought. So didn't have to worry too much about that. He can kind of go with his first blueprint of a team, and everything's been great. He's you can see how he is viewed in the U.S. media. There, everyone he's delightful. From singing country roads or listening to country music wherever he can, to talking about his background and just enjoying American culture. To me, it looks like he loves it to the point where I know they've offered him an extension. Whether that happens, or if he comes back to the U.S., or he comes to coach in MLS, or he comes to consult here, I think he would do it in a heartbeat. So he likes it away. The only thing I would say, and I haven't seen a lot of it, is just for people to think that this switch was just flicked. There's a lot of work by a lot of people, namely coaches and players, to put the U.S. in a position to where they can be successful in 2026. And I would say this team have a responsibility, which they're exceeding at, of putting this program in position for the next World Cup, the next two World Cups. So we could get it even better and maybe one day win this thing.
Do you think that maybe at least the first 12 or 14 players, that this may be the best group of American players, maybe the best American team ever?
Yes, I think it is. The reality is the amount of players playing in Europe, that is the right path. We like our MLS players. We've had successful World Cups in 2002 and 2010 and 2014 with a roster that was a majority in Major League Soccer. But it's that is got its value. There's more money in it. We're seeing players that have started at a young age and didn't switch sports. They wanted to get into soccer. I think Alex Freeman's a good example of that. He chose soccer, and now you're getting a player of a very high level athletically and now technically that you may have not gotten in the past. I think that'll be wiped off the board because in 2030 we'll have an even better team. It's just heading in that direction. It's all good, and now we got to hope that we don't flatline or go in the opposite direction. But this World Cup, I think, is going to make it hard for us to do that.
Yeah, I think the quietly invaluable story, or part of the Alex Freeman story, is just what you said. There's a generation of young people now would say, look, I can play football, I can play basketball, I'm pretty good at baseball, I'm pretty good at soccer, but soccer's not as cool as basketball.
And not enough money in it as well.
Right.
There is now. Yeah.
And Freeman has made it cool. Right, he's made it cool.
Chris Richards too. He's a guy too. His dad was a basketball player, and he could have done that. And so, there's more than one. There's more than one example.
Yeah, absolutely. You talked about the stars, and if anybody's putting together a program, they want the stars to show up. And, some people might have been surprised a year ago that Messi is still playing, but here he is. Mbappe is showing up, doing his thing. Kane comes up with 2 huge goals to salvage England's tournament. Mo Salah now, as we talk about this on Friday, they advanced to the round of 16, Egypt for the first time ever. Holland, I mean, this is if you were going to write this script as you sit near Hollywood, this would be it. The stars are all showing up, period.
Yeah, and FIFA and the executives at Fox and Telemundo have to be thrilled because that sells. And people tune into that, and you build a game around a star, and then they deliver. And, people can always say, yeah, I saw that and I want to see it again. I think certainly with Messi, you don't want to miss when he plays because we don't know how much more time we have with him. So you gravitate towards that. But there's so many more different levels of that. And by the way, with the star powers, with the American stars, I mean, you want this American public watching it to be locked into them. So kids buy a Balogun or a Pulisic or a Alex Freeman shirt as opposed to all those players or Lamine Yamal or something like that. I also enjoy seeing those emerging stars and how they take their place in that, because we'll be talking about them as the big stars, and that's happening too. Young players, they're they're making their future today. And there's been more than Abouadi at Morocco comes to mind. Manzambi, the kid at Switzerland, who's just come out of nowhere to become one of the best, best 11 player here. And that continues on and on. So it's every level of guys in their prime, the stars who are at the back end of their career, and the new kids. It all comes into this big, exciting pot.
You're doing lots of radio on Sirius XM during this tournament, and it's pretty easy to fall into the USA Homer trap, as it were. How do you balance that need to be honest and insightful with the audience and USA is on the front of the jersey, and that's where I'm at?
It's a good question, John, and I haven't really thought much about it. I think we try to you remind yourself, as long as I've been in this profession, to be accurate, and you can cheerlead, but don't let that you know uh, fog your analysis or what you see. And that's why I thought about the Balogun. I could have said, this is, and we can disagree about it, but I looked at it and I go, man, I'm looking at this replay, and I'm sorry, I want him to play against Belgium, but that is those pictures tell a different story. So I try to do that, but I think it's important to cheerlead as well, and catch into that, because we've invested so much. We have so much skin in the game with covering the sport, that we've earned that right to do it, and to get our American public and let them know, if they need some help, why it's so exciting, why this is such an important moment for this sport, and why you're invited to be part of the American movement to consume more soccer. So the tournament helps itself out. You stay in the moment with what you analyze. The big ticket items, and certainly the U.S. soccer, days before and days after, we're still talking about it, and that's just, I think, a natural process where we know which where to go for our audience, and it is our audience, and that's that connection to me is very special.
Yeah, I'm going to put you on the spot a little bit. And the preamble to that is, you and I both know a lot of the people who are presenting on Fox. And a couple of things they've done have driven me crazy. But honestly, I think they sorted it out in the first week. I think some of the sort of rough edges kind of gotten sorted out. I don't think completely, but if I could put you on the spot, what do you think of the work they're doing?
Overall, they've exceeded every expectation. It's such a massive production that you hear about what their plans are, and you say they're never going to pull it off. But the fact that they have, and look, you have to throw a lot of money at that. And I know a lot of people say I like the Telemundo presentation, but Telemundo's is really good too. But their studio show, their features, their their live presence at these games, which again comes with a huge dollar sign attached, haven't been at the level of Fox. Fox has just blew it out. Obviously spending a lot of money getting these big name talent to be the tent pole here for their coverage. It's excellent. It's entertaining. It's going through the scope of it is they feel like they have a very good handle of it. Telemundo's is great too, and it's nice to have those options if you go back and forth. As an American, I would like. We want the story, so their number one thing is to push the American players, the American referees. We've seen them in this tournament. We want them to do well. The American coaches who might be involved in somewhere along this line. And then I think we got to look at the American reporters, the American play-by-play guys. And we still are too British, in my estimation, with that. And I think we have to unearth some of our young people, so that when people want to call a game or they want to report. I look at Jenny Taft, who's an American reporter. I think she's done the best job of all the reporters there with getting access. So, that's a minor detail, but when I hear it, it's nice to have a balance. I love Ian Dark and Derek Ray, who's put so much. I just want to see those people have some skin in the American game too. Other than that, the Fox, the one thing, I think the one big story earlier on was people going after Alexi Lalas, and that was a bit. I thought we just had to get that. I just thought that was something we had to get under it, because when you see Alexi at these games, he is a magnet. Everyone knows who he is, and I think that's very valuable too. So I saw a lot of it about that. I'm glad it kind of softened, because we were getting stories from the Guardian and so forth for a United Kingdom audience about an American reporter. I go, why aren't you watching your coverage? Which I've seen some of the ITV coverage. It's unbelievable too. But it's supposed to be like that, and it's good to see that making that commitment, and it's paying off for Fox with these TV numbers.
Yeah, I will follow up on a couple of those things. I do agree. I would like to hear more young American voices in the mix. A couple of them I can argue with, but Ian Dark, you can't argue with. Darren Fletcher, you can't. I mean, these are people who have been. Derek Ray, he's American as well. He spends half of his time or more here. And on the Alexi Lawless thing, we've known Alexi for how long? Forever.
Yep.
And the people who really took shots at Lexi are the people who haven't watched him do that very thing for the last 10 or 15 years.
Sure.
It's the same act he's been doing. It's the same role he's played for kind of as long as we've known him. It's gotten a little more acerbic in some respect, but
Sure.
I think the Henri, Zlatan, and Rebecca Lowe is as professional a host presenter as anybody in the world. And again, that's what I meant when I said in the first week they sorted it out, because I'm not sure throwing all of them in the mix here and assuming there would be a chemistry automatically was going to happen, but they have sorted it out, I think. And so that's my
and I think Rebecca does a great job with all that. And I think when people are watching and they go, do these guys, the narrative was they can't stand each other. I can assure you that's not the case. Yeah. That quartet get along great. Maybe it's a bit of a shtick thing where they do it and they know how to, and people tune in for that. And that's just smart. That's smart TV for them to know that, they go, hey, maybe there's some heat between Zlatan and Alexi. Let's lean into that. Why not? People will tune in. It's about getting people to tune in.
Yeah. And, Henri is this sort of intellectual French guy, and Zlatan is this sort of, silly guy who's, look at me and then tries to be funny. And Lexi is doing Lexi. And you're right. There is a little shtick in there, and it's gotten a lot better. A couple of other things before we have to run here, Max. This is the 250th celebration of this country. You're a first generation American. And what does in a country that's full of immigrants, and now it's full of people from all over the world, and people who are wearing Portugal shirts who grew up in Chicago, and people who are wearing Egypt shirts who grew up in Memphis, Tennessee. What does this all say about who we are?
That's been that's John, I'm glad you pointed out, because that was when Iraq was playing, and they had there's so many Iraqi families in Michigan that were the majority, I guess, who would go out to support this team. And we're hearing those stories. And these are great communities. These are communities that built this country. My parents left Cuba, and this country had the decency to let us in and let us pursue a bigger life. And there was a lot of struggle, but coming to the U.S., prevented us from who knows what, where we in a place where our life has changed forever. And they made that sacrifice. The U.S. allowed it to take place. And I would be begrudged to say anyone that they can't experience that if that's something they truly want to. And I just hope the immigration with this country is sensitive. And obviously when you're talking about who can come in, there has to be a process, but there has to be some empathy and all of that with regards to it with new people coming into this country, because they do want to come in. And we've seen, 99.9% when those folks come in, they make this country better, and their identity becomes partially American or substantially American. So we went through that process, and just dealing with it firsthand, it's good to see all of that happen in our communities. And then, what it's actually happening, and it's secondary on our national teams. And I think Canada's experiencing that too. It's all these kids from families that were immigrants, us to a lesser degree. The Mexican national team, who are bringing in players that grew up in the U.S. and lines are crossed and blurred, which is a good thing. That's something that I've enjoyed here, where we're kind of, I don't say we're pulling for each other, but it feels like it's us against them in this World Cup, as we talk about Mexico and the Canadians. So with the immigration stories and those ties that bind, it's been very pleasant to do and to cover. And it's just a reminder about how big soccer can be, because those immigrant families, they love this sport. Wherever they come from, there's a good chance that soccer is important, and they'll stop whatever they're doing these games. And that's what we want to do too. So it's nice to know that we're all in the same boat, at least for 2 hours in a day.
Yeah. And I read that about a third of all the players in the World Cup were born in a country not in the country they represent.
Isn't that something, huh?
I mean, that's kind of maybe who the world is. Maybe it's not who we are; it's who the world is. And I would be remiss if I didn't say that our second degree of separation here is that I'm sitting here in Lincoln, Nebraska, and your parents met in Lincoln, Nebraska, right?
Yeah, my parents they had it pretty tough. So when they left Cuba, they were teenagers. My mom was 12 and had to live in orphanages, and their parents came later. They didn't know, so it was very scary. So they needed a lot of help along the way. So they would go to orphanages, they would go to schools, they would do odd jobs, and eventually there was, some hands reached out to help them. And one of them was the University of Nebraska, which had a policy where they let these Cuban kids and their families kind of go there and go to school, and they've benefited from that. They've had a lot of Cuban Americans go through the doors there in Lincoln, and they've come back as donors. They've moved on to bigger and better things. And my parents had the doors open there at Nebraska. That's where they met. And the rest is history. So the University of Nebraska and the state, near and dear to me. If you talk any trash about Nebraska, we got some heat. That's
There
all
you
I'm going
go.
to say.
And I know that
Even though I've only been there once or twice and I haven't been there like 40 years.
the people who live here will tell you, in Lincoln especially, will tell you that this is a refugee city and has been for decade
Most
after
people would never
decade.
know that.
No,
they would never know that.
I mean, in the last 20 years, it's slowed down for what we know as obvious reasons in the last 10 years, but hopefully it'll open up again. And because this town will open its arms to anybody from around the world. And I'm not a Lincoln native, but I will tell you that's who they are, who we are here.
And generally, and the people that, when the towns open up, those people will return the favor in any way they can.
Absolutely.
And represent that city or town the best they could.
Well, you should come visit us then.
All right, I got you now.
I put you on the spot. Max, thanks for your time. I appreciate it.
Anytime, John. Really enjoyed it. Thanks.
Absolutely. Thanks. Max BRETOS is MLS Apple TV play-by-play, LAFC, former ESPN, and he is holding down one of the many forts for Sirius XM FC, sometimes in the middle of the night, and hopefully for you, Max, sometimes other points of the day.
Whenever they need, there's a window. We'll pop in there.
You're the man. We'll get some rest before MLS starts again, which will be soon.
No kidding.
So, all right. Thanks, Max. I'm John Shrader, and this is the Soccer Media Podcast.